Before we begin, take a quiet second and think about someone you know who constantly worries about money. If this video helps you understand money even a little better, consider liking and subscribing for more practical financial insights. And if someone around you feels stuck or overwhelmed by financial stress, sharing this video might genuinely help them. Sometimes a single idea, heard at exactly the right moment, can quietly change the direction of someone's entire financial life. My name is Max, and a few years ago, I found myself standing exactly where many people watching this video stand today. Back then, I believed saving money would eventually make everything feel safe, calm, and completely under control. But what I discovered later is that reaching your first $100,000 creates a completely new challenge. And the strange part is that the challenge does not come from losing money, but from suddenly having choices. Let me tell you about someone very real, someone whose situation might look surprisingly similar to yours. Daniel was 32 years old, working as a software engineer and quietly saving money for almost 7 years. No luxury vacations, no expensive car payments, and many nights cooking simple meals instead of eating out. One evening, Daniel opened his banking app while sitting alone in his car outside a grocery store parking lot. On the screen was a number he had never seen before in his life: $100,000. Daniel did not celebrate. He did not call anyone. He simply stared at the number for several quiet minutes. Then something unexpected happened. Instead of excitement, he felt a strange and uncomfortable sense of paralysis. Because suddenly everyone around him seemed to have a different opinion about what he should do next. One coworker told him cryptocurrency was the fastest way to turn that money into millions. His father suggested real estate because property had worked well for their family for decades. And somewhere deep in Daniel's mind, another voice whispered that maybe he deserved to relax a little now. But the decisions made right after reaching $100,000 can quietly shape your financial future forever. What Daniel did not realize that night was that $100,000 changes how money behaves. This number is not only psychological, it is the point where mathematics finally begins working harder than you do. Charlie Munger, longtime partner of Warren Buffett, once explained this milestone in a brutally honest way. He famously said the first $100,000 is incredibly difficult, but you absolutely must reach it. Most people remember the sacrifice part of that quote, but they often ignore the important second half. After reaching $100,000, Munger said, you can finally ease your foot slightly off the gas. The reason is simple. Once invested properly, your money begins quietly earning money on its own. Imagine Daniel invests his $100,000 into a diversified portfolio, earning roughly 8% annually. Without Daniel working another hour, that portfolio could generate approximately $8,000 every single year. That means about $660 per month appearing quietly because his money has its own job. His money wakes up every morning and goes to work whether Daniel feels motivated or not. It never calls in sick, never complains, and never scrolls social media instead of focusing. This is the moment when saving money slowly transforms into building a wealth-generating machine. And something even more interesting begins happening once compounding finally has enough fuel to accelerate. Daniel spent nearly 7 years grinding and sacrificing to reach his first $100,000. But with the same savings rate and investment returns, the second $100,000 usually arrives much faster. Many investors find their second $100,000 appears roughly 4 years after reaching the first milestone. The third $100,000 often arrives in about 3 years as compounding quietly speeds everything up. By the time Daniel approaches $500,000, each milestone begins arriving surprisingly faster. Like a heavy boulder finally rolling downhill, momentum begins working for you instead of against you. But there is a problem because many people unknowingly stop the boulder right after it starts rolling. They make decisions that appear responsible on the surface, but quietly destroy long-term wealth building. And the first mistake often looks exactly like wisdom and financial caution. After years of sacrifice, Daniel feels protective about the $100,000 he worked hard to save. The thought of watching that money drop during a market crash feels emotionally unbearable to him. So Daniel decides to keep the entire amount sitting safely inside his regular bank savings account. Every month he checks the balance and feels comfort seeing the number unchanged and protected. What Daniel does not realize is that the number staying the same does not mean his money is safe. According to recent FDIC data, the average savings account interest rate in America remains under 1%. Meanwhile, long-term inflation in the United States historically averages close to 3% annually. This means Daniel is quietly losing purchasing power every single year his money sits idle. $100,000 slowly loses $2,000 or $3,000 of real value annually. Nothing dramatic happens, the loss is invisible and silent, which is exactly why it feels harmless. The balance on the screen stays the same while the true buying power quietly shrinks. Over 10 years, this slow erosion can destroy tens of thousands of dollars of potential wealth. If Daniel had instead invested that same money into a simple S&P 500 index fund, historically that investment could grow close to $260,000 over a decade. Instead, Daniel might still be staring at the same $100,000 10 years later. The account looked safe the entire time, but safety slowly became the most expensive mistake. Protecting money sometimes means investing it wisely, not simply hiding it from risk. The second mistake feels exciting, ambitious, and even intelligent while you're making it. After reaching $100,000, Daniel begins paying far more attention to financial news and investing content. Suddenly, his social media feeds are full of conversations about crypto cycles, artificial intelligence stocks, and market predictions. One coworker claims he doubled his money buying a small technology company before everyone else noticed. Another friend insists the real opportunity right now is cryptocurrency before the next massive bull market. Daniel downloads a brokerage app and starts researching individual stocks late at night after work. He tells himself that with enough research, he can find opportunities the market has not discovered yet. This belief feels logical because intelligence and effort usually lead to better results in most careers. Unfortunately, the stock market rarely rewards effort the way traditional careers do. Research firm Dalbar has tracked investor behavior and performance differences for several decades. Their data shows that the average investor consistently earns lower returns than the overall stock market. In recent studies, the typical investor return lagged the S&P 500 by several percentage points. The reason is rarely bad companies, but rather emotional decision-making during a market volatility. Investors buy when excitement is high and sell when fear suddenly appears during temporary market declines. Over many years, those emotional decisions quietly erase enormous amounts of potential wealth. Even professional fund managers with research teams struggle to outperform simple market index funds. According to Spiva reports, most actively managed funds underperform the broader market over long periods. These managers have advanced degrees, massive research budgets, and constant access to financial data. Yet the majority still fail to consistently beat an index fund that simply owns the entire market. The lesson becomes surprisingly simple. Stop trying to outsmart the market and just own the market. The third mistake is quieter than the others and often feels completely reasonable while it slowly begins happening. Daniel spent nearly 7 disciplined years saying no to many purchases his friends regularly enjoyed without thinking twice. He skipped expensive vacations, delayed upgrading apartments, and drove the same reliable car for several extra years. Now that he finally reached $100,000, a very human thought begins quietly forming inside. Maybe it is finally time to loosen the rules slightly and allow himself a little more comfort. After all, he worked incredibly hard and proved he could stay disciplined with money for many years. So Daniel upgrades to a slightly nicer apartment closer to work and begins eating out more often. Nothing extravagant happens, just a gradual shift toward convenience and small luxuries that slowly raise monthly spending. At the same time, he stops tracking every single dollar with the same attention he once maintained. Because deep inside his mind believes the hardest part of the financial journey has already finished. Psychologists call this pattern the arrival fallacy, a surprisingly powerful mental trap affecting many ambitious people. Harvard researcher Tal Ben-Shahar explains it as believing happiness permanently arrives after reaching an important milestone. In reality, the emotional satisfaction fades quickly once the achievement becomes a normal part of everyday life. Soon a new lifestyle baseline quietly replaces the discipline that originally created financial progress and stability. Another economic principle also predicts what happens next in a surprisingly consistent and predictable pattern. Parkinson's law states that expenses naturally expand to fill whatever income or financial resources become available. Without noticing, Daniel slowly spends more each year while saving slightly less than before. 5 years later, his account might grow from $100,000 to only $130,000. Not because he made reckless decisions, but because the powerful momentum of compounding quietly disappeared. He stopped treating $100,000 like the beginning of wealth and started treating it like success. Now, everything shifts because understanding the mistakes is only half the story of building real wealth. What matters far more is building a simple framework that allows your money to grow consistently for decades. The order of this framework matters because small financial decisions compound into massive differences over many years. When Daniel finally learned this system, it completely changed how he viewed his $100,000. Instead of feeling confused by options, he now had a clear structure guiding every financial decision. The first step is building a strong financial foundation before investing a single dollar of that money. That foundation is an emergency fund protecting you from life's unpredictable events like job loss or medical expenses. Financial planners usually recommend keeping 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses safely accessible. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, average American household spending approaches about $6,500 monthly. That means a healthy emergency fund often ranges between $20,000 and $40,000. The goal is not maximizing investment returns, but protecting your long-term investments from unexpected financial shocks. Without this safety buffer, many people panic during emergencies and sell investments at exactly the worst possible moments. Emergency savings should remain liquid, meaning easily accessible without penalties or complicated withdrawal processes. High-yield savings accounts currently offer interest rates near 4 to 5% depending on market conditions. That return will not build wealth alone, but it preserves stability while your long-term investments grow elsewhere. Think of the emergency fund as financial armor protecting the rest of your wealth-building strategy. Once that foundation exists, Daniel can confidently begin investing the remaining portion of his savings. The second step in the framework involves capturing something incredibly powerful that many employees unfortunately ignore. That opportunity is the employer retirement match commonly offered through workplace retirement plans like the 401k. Few financial opportunities provide guaranteed returns, but employer matching contributions are essentially free money waiting. Many companies offer retirement contribution matches, yet millions of workers leave this benefit unused every single year. An employer match means the company contributes additional money whenever you contribute to your retirement account. For example, a 50% match means contributing $100 adds another $50 instantly. That is an immediate 50% return before the money is even invested in markets. Some companies even offer 100% matches up to certain contribution limits each year. Imagine doubling your investment instantly simply by contributing to a retirement account already offered by your employer. No stock, cryptocurrency, or real estate investment reliably offers a guaranteed return like that. Ignoring an employer match is essentially refusing part of the salary you already earned. Daniel realized capturing this benefit should always happen before considering other investment opportunities. Once the employer match is secured, the next step involves addressing debt with logic instead of emotion. Many people feel uncomfortable carrying debt even when mathematical reality suggests investing may produce better long-term results. A simple rule helps guide this decision without complicated financial modeling or confusing calculations. If a debt carries interest above 8%, paying it off usually becomes the smartest move. Eliminating high-interest debt provides a guaranteed return equal to the interest rate you avoid. Credit cards often charge interest rates exceeding 20%, making repayment financially urgent. Paying off that kind of debt effectively delivers a risk-free return few investments can match. However, lower interest debt such as mortgages sometimes carry rates closer to 4%. Historically diversified stock market investments have produced long-term average returns between 7 and 10%. In those situations, investing may mathematically outperform aggressively paying down lower interest debt balances. The key is understanding the difference between guaranteed returns and expected returns with volatility. After managing debt properly, the next powerful step involves using tax-advantaged accounts designed to help Americans build long-term wealth. These accounts exist legally within the tax system and dramatically reduce how much money investors lose to taxes. Yet millions of people never fully use them simply because the rules sound complicated at first glance. The first important account Daniel learned about was the Roth Individual Retirement Account, commonly called a Roth IRA. Contributions to a Roth IRA are made with money that has already been taxed once. But the incredible advantage appears later when the investment growth becomes completely tax-free forever. When retirement arrives, every dollar withdrawn from a properly funded Roth IRA can be taken without paying taxes. That means decades of investment growth escaping taxation entirely, something extremely rare in financial systems. Current contribution limits allow individuals to invest several $1,000s each year depending on regulations and income levels. If Daniel contributes consistently beginning in his early 30s, the long-term results become surprisingly powerful. At an 8% annual return, those contributions could eventually grow into hundreds of thousands of tax-free dollars. The second powerful account Daniel discovered was something many people overlook entirely: the health savings account. Financial experts often call the HSA the most powerful tax-advantaged account available in the United States. That is because it provides something extremely rare: a triple tax advantage within one financial account. First, contributions reduce taxable income immediately, lowering the amount of income taxes paid that year. Second, the invested money grows tax-free over time, exactly like retirement investment accounts. Third, withdrawals used for qualified medical expenses remain completely tax-free at any age. Few financial tools provide all three advantages simultaneously, which makes the HSA uniquely valuable. If medical expenses are paid using regular cash, the HSA investments can remain untouched and compound for decades. This strategy quietly transforms a healthcare account into another long-term retirement investment vehicle. After using tax-advantaged accounts, Daniel still has additional money available for long-term investing and wealth building. This final stage is where many people accidentally complicate investing far more than necessary. Financial media constantly highlights complex strategies, but long-term wealth usually comes from remarkable simplicity. The strategy Daniel eventually adopted involved owning the entire market instead of trying to beat it. This approach relies on broad index funds that represent thousands of companies across multiple industries. One common example is a total United States stock market index fund, tracking nearly every publicly traded company. Another index fund provides exposure to international companies operating across Europe, Asia, and many emerging economies. A third fund adds bonds which reduce volatility and stabilize portfolios during difficult market periods. Together, these three funds create a diversified portfolio representing tens of thousands of businesses worldwide. The entire strategy can operate automatically with extremely low annual fees compared with traditional actively managed funds. Some index funds charge expense ratios close to 0.04% annually. That means investing $100,000 might cost roughly $40 each year in fees. Many actively managed funds charge 10 times that amount while still underperforming simple market indexes. Over decades, those small fee differences quietly compound into hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is why many experienced investors emphasize simplicity rather than chasing complicated investment opportunities. Daniel realized building wealth rarely requires brilliance, but instead requires patience and consistent, disciplined investing. Contributions become automatic, investments remain diversified, and emotional reactions to market noise gradually disappear. Over time, the market continues doing what it historically has done for more than a century. Businesses grow, economies expand, and patient investors quietly participate in that global progress. The strategy sounds boring, but boring is often exactly what successful long-term investing requires. When Daniel first reached $100,000, he believed the hardest part of the journey was finally finished. What he later discovered was that $100,000 was not a finish line. It was actually the starting line of an entirely different phase of financial life. Years earlier, Daniel worked for every dollar, using disciplined sacrifice, patience, and careful daily financial decisions. But once his investments were properly structured, something quietly powerful began happening behind the scenes. His money slowly started generating additional money even while he slept or focused on work. At $100,000 invested, an 8% return produces roughly $8,000 annually. When that portfolio eventually grows to $500,000, the same return generates $40,000 each year. By the time investments reach $1 million, the portfolio may produce income comparable to Daniel's entire salary. The investors who succeed after $100,000 rarely discover secret investments or complicated strategies. Instead, they follow surprisingly simple habits repeated consistently over many years without losing patience. They automate contributions, increase investments whenever income rises, and ignore most financial noise surrounding markets. Most importantly, they never confuse reaching one milestone with completing the entire financial journey. Because wealth is rarely created through dramatic breakthroughs, but through ordinary discipline applied consistently for decades. If this video helped you understand money differently, consider sharing it with someone who might truly need it. A friend, colleague, or family member may be struggling silently with financial stress right now. And sometimes one helpful idea shared at the right moment can genuinely change someone's future. If you enjoy thoughtful conversations about money and long-term wealth, consider subscribing to see future videos. Thank you for spending this time with me and investing these minutes into your financial future. And remember, your first $100,000 is not the destination, it is where the real journey begins.